Hey folks, I am Troy and you're watching TroyTube. Today we have an exciting product launch for you, actually a brand launch so to speak. Last Sunday we were able to finally do a soft launch on our website after many months of delay after Hurricane Ian here in Southwest Florida. As you will recall, Tammy and I basically picked up, moved halfway across the country to start a new life and a new beginning and a new business here in Southwest Florida. The hurricane put that on hold for several months. There's been a lot of obstacles and bumps in the road along the way just trying to get off the ground. But last Sunday we were finally able to launch and offer our e-learning course and our subscription service to be a member of our site. Now a quick word about that e-learning course. It is a full course on Inkscape. It is a complete e-learning course. It has 13 lessons. 3 hours of instructional video combined across those lessons. Every lesson has Q&A, and if you do well enough on it, at the end of it, you'll get a certificate you can keep or print out. Now that course is very thorough. If you become a member, you can do this two ways. You can buy the course outright. Right now it's on sale for $19.99. You buy it, you have access to it for a lifetime. If you subscribe, however, it's a much better value. We offer that subscription right now for $349 a month. It is billed annually, so you pay for the year up front. At the end of April, that's going to go to $399 per month. In that subscription and membership, you will get access to the Inkscape course and all future e-learning courses, free or paid. I will be adding courses that some are free and some will be paid, and you will have access to all of those courses in that membership. You will get a discount. Right now it's a 3% discount across all purchases across the site. And you'll also be put in a private learning group in TroyTube.net where you'll have direct access to me for support for your courses, and along with all the other people who are taking these courses that are members, so we can collaborate and hopefully learn things together. So I'd highly advise you to evaluate that membership. There will be more benefits added as we go. Has some really cool things planned. So take a look at that, and I invite you to take that course, and I'm sure you'll be surprised at how thorough it is at learning Inkscape. The next course is going to be Advanced Inkscape. I don't have a release date yet for it, but we're working on it. So after that soft launch last Sunday, we are ready to actually start selling some physical product and shipping it, selling it and shipping it. Not just shipping it, you got to pay for it. And that is our line of sublimation products. dpiSub is the brand, and this is our house brand. So we have premium sublimation ink. I'll talk more about that in a minute. Heat tape and sublimation paper in 4 sizes: 8.5 by 11, 8.5 by 14, 11 by 17, and 13 by 19. Now, what the real goal was with sublimation, I wanted to bring production quality sublimation to the craft market. If you go purchase a production or commercial sublimation printer, you're going to pay quite a bit for that. And really, people don't want to pay those kind of prices for something they want to, in most cases, try before they commit to it. So if you were to go buy a commercial Epson printer or a Sawgrass printer, something like that, it could be a couple $1,000s to start out with, maybe $1,500, maybe more, depending on what options you choose, which printer you pick, and the ink and everything that comes along with it. Usually the printers come with just a certain amount of ink depending on which brand you buy, and the reinvestment can be significant. Now the difference with commercial printers is they work all the time, and you can depend on them pretty good. They are more expensive. You get what you pay for when it comes to dependability and quality and things like that. Now, for years, people have been purchasing consumer-grade Epson printers and converting those to sublimation. Now, when you talk about converting, most of the time that's a scary word. People get concerned. I'm an electronic engineer, so when you say converting, I automatically think, you're probably taking some parts out and changing parts and putting things in and doing some modifications to it, and it's a scary sound, but that's not really the case. Now the older ones, a lot of people used to buy these empty cartridges, use a syringe to fill it with ink. It was messy, tedious, you had to do it a lot. A lot of times the chips in the cartridges quit working, and it was really kind of a hassle. Then Epson came out with EcoTank printers, where you have a significant size ink well for each color of the CMYK, cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. And those EcoTank printers hold significantly more ink. The difference with Epson printers from Canon and HP is that the Canon and HP printers use thermal inkjet technology. So the print head gets hot and you can't run sublimation ink through it. The Epson printers have piezo print heads. And the easiest way for me to explain what a piezo is, and it's spelled piezo, P-I-E-Z-O. The piezo, if you remember back when we had watches that first became digital and they had digital alarms on them, and if you pop the back off, it had like a little gold speaker in the back of it that made contact and beeped. That's a piezo speaker. And so basically those flex when they are shot with pulses of electricity. So an Epson print head runs at about 8,000 hertz, so every second there's about 8,000 flexes of the piezo spraying the ink out of the heads. It's a real simplified explanation, but essentially that's how it works. Now the difference with our ink versus other inks on the market is our ink was designed to work in those Epson printers at that frequency with the right viscosity of the liquid. Now viscosity is defined, the simple definition is it's a liquid's resistance to flow. So how thick or thin it is and how it's affected by temperatures and other elements that may affect the flow of the ink. You've probably heard the term viscosity a lot on motor oil commercials when they talk about how the oil stays consistent viscosity as the engine gets hot. Same principle. So the reason that's important is the viscosity, this stuff's happening at a very, very tiny level. So the viscosity is important to keep the ink flowing consistently. So when it's spraying out the ink basically at 8,000 times a second out of that head, has to be perfect every time. If not, you can get clogs, dropouts, things of that nature. And and I'm not talking about banding when I talk about dropouts. There'll be a line across your paper, and here on the screen is an example of banding. And usually what causes that is when the print head is putting down too much or too little ink. In a normal situation, most of the time it's caused by selecting the wrong type of paper, and the ink is either overlapping or leaving a gap between each of the pass. And you can tell that that document or that photo was printed with a printer that has something that goes back and forth. You can see the lines in it. Dropouts are when there's a clog or more likely an air bubble that forms in the print head nozzle, and it leaves a total blank line, like a pinhead size line all the way across your prints with no ink whatsoever. And a lot of times people will run power cleanings or they'll run a nozzle check. Sometimes they let them set overnight. It tends to work itself out. And our ink is designed to minimize the risk of that happening. It could still happen, but it's minimized. Okay, it's reduced greatly. And the other thing about it is that our ink is made in a very high quality lab. It's handled through filtration systems and clean rooms. And so the ink that's made in foreign sources, usually most of it on Amazon is made in China. Their labs do not generally have very high quality controls. That's one thing. So if they're not working with the inks and different materials in a clean room environment, which means there is zero dust in the air. One of the other applications for a clean room are hard drive manufacturers or companies that work on hard drives from computers. When they take them apart, they have to be in a clean room so that no dust gets in them. Ink is the same way. If there's dust in the air and that liquid is exposed to the air, dust is going to get into the liquid. Same thing with 3D printer filament. I learned a long time ago that really cheap filament that's made in China and some other places, it's made in these same kind of environments, and dust and contaminants gets in the filament and it will clog a 3D printer nozzle head. Okay, so quality control is very important with that. The reason I know that this is a fact is I have some experience working with partners in foreign countries that make different materials. I worked or attempted to work with a vinyl vendor one time out of China, and a friend of mine who works with one of our former distributors called me one day and he said, I'm going to be about 10 miles from that vinyl distributor or manufacturer, and do you want me to do a site visit? So I said, sure, here's their contact information. So He went on site and described it as basically a temporary building. It was a big metal type outdoor shed type building, and it had basically these temporary walls set up around it. It was all open air, no air conditioning, no temperature control, no humidity control. That area of Shenzhen, China, and that manufacturing area is kind of on the same latitude, I think, here with South Florida. So it's very humid, hot in the summer. He said there were bugs flying around. They're pouring adhesive out in the open, and all these different things. And so, one of the shockers was, and I'm not going to say the company, but he sent me a picture of some boxes on pallets of vinyl where a major company was having made there. And I was kind of really shocked when I found that out and saw what he described as a not so clean environment. And so those kind of concerns. And likewise, in the U.S., if you have companies that bottle their own ink, a lot of them buy it in bulk and they bottle it themselves. They just basically pour it in the bottling machines. It's exposed to the air, same thing. It's getting dust and contaminants in it. And those things will clog a print head. It'll end up in your prints, and you just don't want that. You want good quality premium ink to do this on a production and business level. Okay. So let's talk about the paper real quick. The sublimation paper that we offer from dpiSub is available in all 4 sizes: 8.5 by 11 U.S. letter, 8.5 by 14 U.S. legal, 11 by 17 ledger, U.S. ledger, and 13 by 19, which is called Super B. Now, that you got to keep in mind when you buy a printer and the size paper that you want to print. A lot of people don't really think of this up front. They think, oh, it'd be great to be able to do this. They don't realize they have maybe a 12 by 15 heat press and they've bought 13 by 19 paper. So you got to make sure you have the ability to press the size prints that you want to press. Okay. Now I know some people do piece together sublimation prints and press them on a garment. It's a little bit easier to do on a garment or something that's a soft material. You can't really do it on a hard surface because you'll see the lines from that. But I guess people do that. I don't do it, but I do recommend having a heat press bigger than the largest size that you're going to print a sublimation print on. So let's talk about printer choices. Consumer grade printers versus sublimation printers. I mentioned earlier, sublimation printers that are made commercially, one of the big features they have is that they will circulate that ink. And so if you don't print for 3 or 4 months, and as long as you leave the printer on, when you come back to it, it's probably going to print fine because they circulate the ink and they prevent the ink from drying up and clogging the heads. Epson EcoTank printers cannot do that. I'm working on a solution for that. I hope to have that available in a few weeks. We'll see how that goes. But if you don't print, regardless of what kind of printer it is, if it's an EcoTank or any other inkjet printer, if you don't print for a long time, it's going to dry up and clog the heads. You're going to have to clean the heads or run a power clean, something like that. And usually just a nozzle check won't do it, or a regular cleaning. So you want to be able to be maintaining those regularly. So hopefully I'll have a solution for that. I'm going to keep working on that until, that's one of those things that I'll probably keep working on until I figure it out. And then another thing is the warranty. A lot of people say, hey, doesn't that void the warranty if you put other ink in the printer? Yes, it does. If you buy an EcoTank printer, it's a consumer grade printer, like the one sitting behind me here, and you put ink in it other than the Epson ink that comes with it, or Epson brand ink, typically you're voiding the warranty. There's different ways to look at that, okay? The way I look at it is for what you're paying for the printer and the percentages of problems that it causes that might normally invoke a warranty situation, they're very small, very minor. You just play the percentages, and at the price you're paying for them, you can buy multiple printers for one commercial printer. For example, the least expensive EcoTank printer, like an EcoTank 2400, they're like $200 or something like that. You can buy 5 of those for one small commercial printer that does the same thing at the same size. So, theoretically, you think about that over the course of a year. The printers come with a 1-year warranty. You could replace it 5 times for that. So you're playing the percentages, and that's the way I look at it. And I don't worry about that too much. I did have one that had a bad print head one time. Whether it was the ink that I put in it, because it was a low-grade ink that came from China, or just a bad print head for the manufacturer, I don't know. But once the print head went bad, printer was unusable. I don't know if you can buy replacement print heads or not. I think you can, but I haven't gone down that path yet. But that's something you want to consider. I understand that Epson has a problem right now, actually, where people are buying these printers in retail big box stores. They throw any kind of ink they want in them, causes a problem. They return it to the store, and the clerks don't know any better. They swap it out, and then Epson's stuck with a printer that has some off-label ink in it that's caused a problem with it. And it's unfortunate. That's what Epson has to deal with now. So when we talk about choosing a printer, what I tell people to decide first is the size printer they want to go with. You have the standard size that does 8.5 by 11, or the large format that does up to 13 by 19. The large format will do all the way down, of course, to 8.5 by 11. The 8.5 by 11 will go up to 8.5 by 14. A lot of people don't realize that, they don't think about it's an 8.5 by 11 printer, but I can print legal size up to 14 inches in it. You can do a lot with an 8.5 by 11 or an 8.5 by 14 sheet of paper. Now, I'm a big guy. I'm 6'5", 235. Now, this is an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. If I hold it up to my chest, for the most part, I can make a print that would work for most garments or most designs that I would do. If I had 8.5 by 14, I wanted to make it just a little bit wider because I am a big guy and a little bit broader shouldered than most people. You add 3 inches to the sheet of paper. So you can do quite a bit with that size printer. You can also do a lot of smaller items, coasters, dog tags, luggage tags, picture frames, anything that will fit on this size paper you can do. So really think about that, because a lot of people, like I said, they want to try it before they commit to it. A lot of people have limited funding, honestly, so you may consider buying a smaller printer and selling smaller objects on Etsy or whatever, or on your local Facebook page, to raise the money to move up to a larger printer, and wait till you get that demand. That's your choice. I would advise you to buy the biggest one that your budget will afford, considering how much you want to get into. If you're dead set, you want to do it, yeah, go all out. Go ahead and buy an Epson EcoTank 15,000 or something like that. If you're unsure, if you want to get started, go for something that's smaller, along the lines of the EcoTank 2400. The one behind me is a 4800. I think the new one's a 4850. There's a lot of different models. So let's talk about the models real quick. So a lot of people ask, what model printer should I buy? And that's a good question. The best advice I have is, beyond choosing which size you want, once you have that and you know which size you're going to buy, then let's take a look at the features of the printer itself. There's one thing that I do recommend people avoid. That is, some Epson EcoTank printers have more than 4 ink wells. Some of them have 5 and 6 ink wells, and usually they're adding a different higher resolution ink for photo printing, like a photo black, for example. And they will work. It may not cause a problem, but it can. I prefer to keep things simple. Keep things simple, stupid. And eliminate the possibility of those extra ink wells causing problems. There's no reason to have them, unless you get down to where maybe you're getting a good deal on one of those printers, or it's the only one available and you need one really bad or something. That's the only time I'd probably advise going that route. So look for the printers, and when you look at the picture online or in the stores or on the box, on the front of it, you will see it has 4 ink wells on it, and that's what you want to go for. After that, then you want to look at some of the features of the printer. For example, so they're almost, I think they're probably all-in-ones. I can't think of any EcoTank that's not an all-in-one printer that has a scanner and fax on it. Of course, hardly anyone uses a fax anymore, but the scanner does come in handy. Especially since you're doing sublimation, you can scan photos or other things in to be able to work with, clean up in Photoshop or whatever, and bring them in and print them and then use them as a design. I personally like scanners with document feeders. Being a business owner, we keep a lot of records. We have to keep a lot of records. a lot of paperwork. Instead of keeping it in a file cabinet, we like to scan things. So it's real easy to throw, a 10-page document in there and scan it real easy. And we can use that instead of having to buy a separate document scanner for a desktop or something like that. Those are your choices. The other thing I would say to look at is the connectivity solution that's on it. All of these printers are Wi-Fi, I think. And then some of them, like this 4800 behind me, also have a plug-in Ethernet port. I'm an old school IT guy. I worked in IT for 25 years. So I do like to plug in a wire sometimes because a wire works. It works better than Wi-Fi. Here at the office, we have Wi-Fi. We have some Wi-Fi devices, but I ran cabling for all of our computers, our phones, and some of the printers are plugged in because if I'm out of the office and something happens, it's easier for me to say, look where it's plugged in and look to see if the light's on, rather than trying to walk them through a Wi-Fi setup that's on a control panel on a printer that I can't see or something. So that's my reasoning. And, so take a look at that and see if it makes a difference for you. You might have that preference too. Another thing I'll say is that if you're looking on Amazon at printers, be careful, or any other website actually, be careful of the descriptions. A few weeks ago, I saw a certain model Epson EcoTank printer on Amazon. I think it was called a 5179 or something like that. And it said largest media format was 13 by 19. So I ordered it. It was like $100 cheaper than a 15,000 ET 15,000, and I thought, well, great, I can save $100 and accomplish the same thing. When the printer arrived, it was not. 8.5 by 14 was the largest media size, so the description was wrong. So when you decide on one, I would advise you to take the model number, Google it, look at Epson's website, go to CNET and look for reviews or something like that, and find out what the exact specs are. Don't trust the ones on the website you're buying it from, especially if it's Amazon, because the sellers aren't always accurate with that information. The last thing I would caution you against is watching the model numbers and making sure you're getting an EcoTank, because, for example, the EcoTank 15,000, the ET 15,000, if you search on Epson 15,000, you'll find another one, I think it's an XP 15,000 Expression, and that is a cartridge type that is also a large format, so you do not want that one. Just be careful what you're doing, because I fall victim to this from time to time myself, and I've been shopping online for 25 years. I'll be looking at something, and then I'll see a suggested product, and I'll click on it, and something will catch my eye, and I quickly order it, and when it comes, I find out it didn't have even the key feature I was looking for to begin with. So just be careful, make sure you're getting the right thing when you order or buy your printer. Now, when you set up your printer, you're going to want to connect it to your Wi-Fi. Typically, it's how most people will set them up. Like I said, some of them will have an Ethernet port. They all have USB connectivity as well. So if you want to plug it into your computer with a USB cable, that works fabulously as well. Wi-Fi makes it easy to set it across the room or in another room, obviously, and they're really easy to set up. They're all a little bit different, so just follow the setup instructions. Usually it's on the control panel right on the front. It walks you through it. It will typically look for your Wi-Fi. You put in your password and boom, you're connected to your Wi-Fi, and then you install your drivers on your computer. Now, one very important thing with that is you want to make sure that you go to Epson's website, download the exact drivers, current drivers for that printer. I think most of them still come with a CD with the drivers. I don't recommend using it. Most modern computers don't even have a CD drive in them. So go out and download the drivers for that model number printer and install that software package and set it up that way. Typically, I'll connect it to the Wi-Fi first. And then when you're installing the software, there will be a section that will ask you, do you need to set it up, or is it already on your Wi-Fi network? If you do the Wi-Fi first, you choose that, it will find it, it will set it up for you. It's glorious when all of that works smooth. So just be careful with that and make sure you install those drivers. Do not plug your printer in and just let Windows or the Mac OS install the driver. I don't know about Mac OS. Maybe it's better than Windows about this, but typically it will not detect the exact model number and download all the correct drivers and everything, and you will miss out on features. You want to use that print dialog. You want to get in the habit of that when you are printing, to use that print dialog. Back in the old days of teaching people how to use computers in offices, and people were switching to Microsoft Word and Excel, anytime they needed to print, they would just go up there and hit that little print button. Who knows where it spit the print out at or what options were set or anything. And I used to really teach people, don't do that. Go to File and Print or hit Control P and get the print dialog so that you can see your settings every time you print. When you use that print dialog, you will have controls for color quality, standard or high quality, your paper size, your paper source, your paper tray. Sometimes there's a paper tray with a manual feed in the back. You will have controls to mirror your print. You'll have color controls, color saturation levels, things like that you don't get if you don't use it. So what I tell people, it's the same thing as every other habit, especially with a computer. Once you do it 5 or 10 times, you will get used to it and you will love it and you will depend on it the rest of your life to be able to print that way. And especially when you have, everybody has a friend that needs help sometimes with their computer, and you get to pass that knowledge along and help them sometimes too. Now, when you put the ink in your printer, when you receive your ink, it's going to be sealed in plastic bags, and it has a label on it that tells you specifically what you need to do to open your ink. And there's a few steps to this. First, you're going to want to have a set of gloves, so latex or nitrile gloves, because ink is messy and it does stain, and it's very thin. So one little drop of ink will splash. A tiny drop will make a mess. So be careful with it. I like to have gloves, some paper towels, and some rubbing alcohol to clean up any little drops that I make. Alcohol will help you get it out of any little crevices or anything if you're working on a table that has wood grain on it or something like that. But anything that's porous that will soak up the ink, it will stain it, so be very careful with it. Recommend doing it, maybe laying down a sheet of plastic or some paper or something to work with it on. And I keep rubbing alcohol in a little spray bottle that I got at Dollar Tree, so you might want to consider that. Just makes things a little bit easier, a little bit safer, so you don't make a mess. I would equate this to when I eat spaghetti and I'm wearing a white shirt, I will inevitably end up with the tiniest little red spot of spaghetti sauce on my shirt. Ink is the same way. It's very thin. Like I said, a little tiny drop will splash. So you're going to open the plastic bag. There is tape around the lid. You'll want to remove this tape. So we overdo this a little bit to make sure this ink doesn't leak out. So open the plastic bag, take the tape off, and then the cap has two parts. Of course, the top part of the cap that you normally take off to put the ink in the printer, and then there's the entire piece of the cap that's screwed onto the plastic bottle that you're going to want to remove at this point, and there is a foil seal underneath of that cap. The best way that I found to take this seal off is I use a hobby knife. So a hobby knife or a razor blade, then I cut about 90-95% around in a circle just inside the bottle. Leave just a little bit attached so that it doesn't fall down in the ink. That way it allows me to kind of grab it and peel it off without risking dropping that foil down inside the ink bottle. And like I said, if you make any drops or anything, just quickly clean it up with a little bit of alcohol and a paper towel. And then you're going to want to fill each ink well of your printer with the ink. And you're just going to do this one at a time, match up the colors with what's labeled on the printer, and slowly turn the bottle upside down and put it on the tank. And you should hear the kind of the glug glug sound of the ink draining down into the ink wells. And then you can visibly see it on the front of the printer fill up as it goes. Now, one of the things to be careful of is when you remove the bottle from the ink well after filling it, sometimes you drop a little droplet or two of ink. So again, keep that paper towel handy to kind of soak that up so that it doesn't cause you any problems later on. After you fill it with ink, get the printer started up. It's going to go through kind of a cycle. And then one of the things it may ask you to, I'm not sure if all of them ask this or not, the 4800 did, but do a nozzle check, because this was the 4800. It was a brand new printer. As you see, there's a few segments missing. Do not be alarmed. It's because it is a new printer. It doesn't have any ink in the print heads at all, so it could miss a few segments on a print nozzle check, and you just need to run the nozzle check and print head cleaning one time and let it circulate a little bit of ink through the print heads, and it should be fine after that. And then the next step is a print head alignment. And this printer has 2 steps to that. It prints out a grid of little blocks, and it asks you on the front of the printer on the control panel to pick which blocks have the least amount of lines that are visible in them. And so there's 7 lines and there's 7 blocks, so you just kind of pick which one looks the best according to what it's asking. And then the next step, it prints these little rectangles that are side by side, and it asks you to match up which ones have the most consistent color pattern through it, so that you can't tell that there's a separation between the two or that there's any overlap. And once you do that, your printer should be set up and ready as far as the print heads go, and should be ready to print an image. So let's talk about the pricing of the products. It's real simple. The tape is $6.99 per roll. This is a polymod heat tape, heat resistant up to, I don't know, 600 degrees, something like that. I can't remember what the specs are on it, but good quality heat tape that is going to work well for you. For the sublimation paper, the 8.5 by 11 paper is $19.99 for 100 sheets. 8.5 by 14, $26.99. It is 110 sheets in the box. It's just a little bit different. All the other 3 sizes, 8.5 by 11, 11 by 17, and 13 by 19, have 100 sheets in the box. The 8.5 by 14 has 110. Okay, so the 8.5. To recap, 8.5 by 11 is $19.99 for 100 sheets. 8.5 by 14 is $26.99 for 110 sheets. 11 by 17 is $36.99. 13 by 19 is $49.99. And all of the 3 of the 4 sizes, except for the 8.5 by 14, have a watermark on the back. I don't know if you can see that. I think you can see that on the camera. But it has a watermark that says back on it, so you know which side you're supposed to print on. The 8.5 by 14 is blank on both sides. There's 2 things. The box says print this size. So there's a label in the box. So as long as you leave it in the box, when you take it out, you should know what side to print it on. The other thing, the way you can tell, let's say I pull a sheet out and I drop it. Oh, well, I now don't know which side it was. When you feel it, pretty much every sublimation paper, you can tell which side you're supposed to print on because it has a coating on it. And so when you feel that paper, you can tell which side you can print on. So just be careful with that with 8.5 by 14 and you'll be fine. Now the pricing for the ink. So we sell our ink, the DPI Premium Sublimation ink. We know it's premium because it says it right there on the bottle, okay? And I'm telling you it's premium. These are 140 milliliter bottles. All 4 colors are 140s, 140 ml, okay? Now, when you compare the price, these are $19.99 per color, or if you buy the whole set of 4, it's $69.99. Now, the way that shakes out, if you were to compare this, the initial price, you look at it and say, wow, it's $70 for all 4 colors. I can get it for half that price on Amazon. One of the things I want to point out too is when this ink from China and these other places, what they do is they take just any old sublimation ink. There's not anything special about it. It's not designed specifically for these printers. They just put it in a bottle that makes it convenient to put in an eco tank without regard for the viscosity or anything like that, that makes this premium ink. But the premium inks, when they just put just any old sublimation ink in the bottle for you to make it convenient for you, that tends to introduce some different problems with the ink and those dropouts, things like that I talked about earlier. Okay, so back to the pricing. We sell them as 140s. Most of them, or a lot of them on Amazon, sell a 140 in black, and the colors are 70 milliliters. So if you have a 140 and 370s, that's 350 milliliters total. And if that's being sold for, say, $35, most of them are about $33 to $38, somewhere in that range. So I just picked $35. That's 10 cents per milliliter. Okay. With our inks, all 4 colors gives you a total of 560 milliliters. That's 12 cents per milliliter. It's only 2 cents per milliliter more. 20% more is all. It's not double the price. It's not even close. Okay. And if you buy all 4 of these in that format, they're $69.99. So that's the 12 cents per milliliter. The other thing that you have to be careful of is replenishment cost. And this was interesting. When I went out and did some research, I had a hard time finding some of the brands that sold anything other than all 4 colors. And so if you put their ink in your printer and you need to replenish one color later on, you have to buy all 4 colors. You're spending $35 or $40 again just to get maybe just black or something. So the replenishment cost is a concern as well. Now you might say, oh, well, I'll just have tons of that other ink, but the more you go, you're just going to build up a stockpile of ink. It's not going to do you any good, and you're overspending for it. Now, one of the big questions I get, I'm going to address here, is can I put your ink in with my other ink and replace it? That's a difficult question. It takes a difficult answer, actually. And what I tell people is, my official answer is, I wouldn't recommend mixing ink of any brand with any other brand, okay, unless that brand specifically advertises it as a direct replacement for the other brand, which I really have yet to see out there. If you call an ink, if I call XYZ ink manufacturer that's just reselling ink they bring over in bulk from China, and I say, can I replace my, Cobra ink, for example, went out of business. A lot of people use them for years. They went out of business. And if I call someone and I say, can I put your ink just in and top and pour in on top of my other ink, and will it be okay? And they say, yes, of course, we've done it. We didn't have any problems. We have customers to do it. They don't have any problems. They're just trying to sell you their ink, in all likelihood. Now, maybe they have done it. Maybe they haven't had any problems. I did it once. I didn't really have any problems. I didn't see any noticeable color differences. It seemed to be okay. Theoretically, the worst thing that's going to happen is if you put our premium ink in on top of another low quality ink, theoretically you're diluting the low quality ink with our better quality ink, and you are degrading the quality of our ink with that lower quality ink, theoretically. I don't know what could happen. Maybe there's something different about it that turns to gel. I don't know. I can't make that recommendation. You have to remember, I'm an engineer. I can't make recommendations of things that aren't absolute answers. And I think that frustrates people sometimes, because I won't give a direct answer on certain things, because it's hard to question and answer, and it's hard to put your name and your reputation on the line for something that doesn't really have a definitive answer to it. If anyone chooses to do that, let me know. If you mix your ink, our ink, with your ink, and you know what brand it is, and you don't see any problems with it or anything, let me know. But I will probably never make that recommendation with dpiSub ink for the eco tanks, just because you're introducing variables and it makes support incredibly hard. And if you call me and you say, or you send me an email and say, I put your ink on top of my XYZ ink that I bought from Amazon, and now my color isn't correct, or if my printer clogs every time I try to print, I'm going to say, I'm sorry, I can't help you, because I don't recommend doing that. So that's my official answer on mixing inks. And I know that's probably not what a lot of people want to hear. But think of it this way. If you have, like I mentioned earlier, a lot of people buy the smaller format printers to get started or to try sublimation. If that's the case and you're thinking about upgrading to a newer, larger printer, now might be the time that you can make that switch to dpiSub ink and dpiSub supplies and make that happen. So to round out this video for this launch, I'm going to make a sublimation mug for you. I already have a design ready that I'm going to print. I'm going to save you the pain of watching me print it, but I'm going to go print it. I'm going to bring it back here and set up the camera and take close-ups, and we're going to press it on a coffee mug with the Cricut mug press and show you what we get with DPI ink as the end result from an image being pressed onto a coffee mug. And we're going to do a lot more of these videos down the road. Alright, so here's our print, and as you can see, it is mirrored. I set it up mirrored so I didn't have to mirror it on the print dialog, so the image was already mirrored. So you could do it either way depending on how you want to do it. And so we're going to trim this and tape it to the mug here. So when I'm making a mug, one of the things I like to do is just kind of lay the mug down and make sure the print is going to fit properly. Sometimes, you know, I may make a mistake when I'm printing, and I'll not catch the maybe a setting that says scale to fit or something like that, and it'll come out larger than what it needs to be. So this one looks like everything is correctly sized, and I can kind of gauge how closely I need to cut and trim this to make it fit on the mug properly. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to make sure I cut this bottom edge really straight so that when I put the paper on, I'll be able to line it up with the bottom edge. You'll see how I'll do that here in just a moment. So here's where we want to be very careful about making sure the edges are squared on the bottom side. The top won't matter too much, but try to get it as square as we can. And I'm going to guess about right there, and I've got it nice and squared up. So now when I cut that, you'll see that the design is nice and straight across the bottom edge. And in this case, cut the top edge nice and straight too. Now the way I like to do this is to go ahead and put a piece of tape on each side, on the back. That way it's in position and ready for me to apply and tape it onto the mug. Now this tape is a little hard to work with. It's really thin, so you want to be very careful not to let it stick to itself and let it fold over when you're working with it. Now the way that I'll do this with the mug is I will get it centered left to right so that it's kind of equal distance away from the handle on each side here. And I'll put the bottom edge along the bottom edge of the mug. And so the way I'll do that is go ahead and put one side in place, and then I'll pull it around tight so that there's no gaps. You don't want any looseness in the paper. And so now you can see that I've got a nice straight edge all the way around the bottom of that mug. This is just a Cricut infusible ink mug. It's a sublimation mug. And normally you'll want to put you know, butcher paper around this to keep the gas from bleeding out and getting inside your mug press. In this case, my design is a good ways inside the border all the way around the paper, so I won't have that problem. So I'm just going to go ahead and press it as it is and just hold the mug in there nice and centered while I close that, and close it and let it press. Now the mugs take a while to press, and press well, so this thing's going to be really hot when I take it out. So I'm going to use a paper towel. I don't have my gloves with me, but normally you want to pick up a pair of heat resistant gloves. I'll see if we can get those in and sell those as well. You can get those on Amazon, so just check for sublimation gloves or heat resistant gloves, and that way when you grab the items out, you won't burn your hands. Okay, as I mentioned, this thing is going to be very hot. You see some steam coming out. I think you can probably see that on the camera. And so I'm just going to set this here and let it cool for a few minutes, and we'll come back and take the wrap off and see the finished product in a minute. Alright, so the mug has cooled down quite a bit. It's still pretty warm up here, but the handle's cool. So the way I do this, rather than trying to pick at the tape or something, I just like to grab the paper with a weeding tool or something, and then I can just grab it and peel it off a lot easier. And there is the finished product. Look at that, dishwasher safe, ready, and the nice distressed look with the torn edges. Looks like I got it centered pretty good on the handle too. And fresh new mug, sublimated. Yeah, it's a little warm still, but looking really good. I also wanted to show you, I did some presses. This is on a t-shirt. This is the logo. You can see how nice and vibrant, sharp, and the colors are. And then I did this one on the sleeve of a polo shirt. Came out really nice. See if you can see how nice that is and the texture of that shirt. 100% polyester, of course, which was where you'll get your best transfers. 100% polyester. You can go down to about 65% polyester is where most people stop at. The less polyester you have with a cotton poly blend, the more distressed or faded look it may end up with. So some people like to experiment with that. Alright, so there you have it. The dpiSub sublimation ink, tape, and paper are live on our website. So orders over $60, you get free shipping. And we're going to start shipping. We'll probably get some out this weekend as people start ordering. Like I said, our first employee starts Monday, so we're really excited about that. Be able to start shipping products and start getting things stocked on the shelves and ready so we can start growing this business and bring you guys the quality products and customer service and everything you deserve and expect. And so let's give you another look at the mug, how crisp and clean and sharp that is. Absolutely incredible. And you see how quick it was and easy to make that. Now the design took me some time, I'm not going to lie about that, but we're going to see if we can make some of these designs available to you. Probably won't be this, it might be Saturday, might be this weekend, today when you're seeing this video actually. So keep your eye out. We'll see what I can do to get this out there for you, as well as some other things. And I've got another pretty big surprise coming for you. I don't know when I'm going to have it ready, but it's going to be very soon, that I think you're absolutely going to love when it comes to doing your sublimation stuff. So head on over to bulkvinyl.com, go to the sublimation category, and pick up your ink and your tape and your paper. Get your Epson EcoTank printer. Earlier in the video, if you need to go back and watch that again and listen to the recommendations on what to look for on the printer, do that again. And if you have any questions or comments, post them down below the video. Go to TroyTube.net, the main crafting group. It's where we're going to be doing all the questions and answers and conversations about all this stuff. So I look forward to engaging with everyone and getting this kind of quality sublimation product out there to you in the craft market, dependably, professionally, and affordably.